June 12, 1898. Somewhere in the state of Illinois, a house built of 2 floors suddenly, with no warning, catches fire. The blaze was strange from the very beginning. It erupted all at once, as if the whole structure had simply exploded. Within 20 minutes, the house was gone, completely reduced to ash. The neighborhood was shaken. How did a fire start and end so fast? People said it must have been supernatural, that something dark had done this, something not of this world. Outside the house, a woman stood watching the flames with her 2 daughters. All 3 of them were crying. She was visibly devastated. But underneath the grief, part of her already knew this had nothing to do with the supernatural. What she didn't know yet was that this fire was going to change her life completely. It would make her name number 1 in the world of crime. Her story would eventually inspire more than 160 works of literature, film, and art. 160 separate creative works built around what she would become. If this is your first time here, I'm Amin, the narrator. I cover everything strange and mysterious on this planet. Before we begin, I want to say something important. This channel exists to tell you the full truth. No shortcuts, no omissions. If you've been here a while, you already know that. And if you're new, welcome. This is what we do here. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, because as I always say, every story, no matter how many times it's been told, sounds different when I tell it. Today, for the first time, I'm covering a story unlike any I've covered before. It's strange and at the same time completely logical. It has a victim, a criminal, fate, luck, psychology, all woven together into one of the most complex true crime cases in history. This case rewrote laws in the field of criminal psychology, permanently changed how forensic science approaches female offenders, and inspired dozens of literary and artistic works. Today's subject is genuinely unlike anything else. So if this video found you by accident, you just stumbled into a community of over 400,000 people who love diving deep into the most fascinating, most complex true stories on Earth. Subscribe and join us. Support this video with a like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because as I always say, every story has been told before, but never quite the way I tell it. And that, I promise you, is especially true today. Let me ask you a question before we dive in. Is it possible for a woman to kill? Write your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. Can a normal woman contemplate taking a human life? The short, simple answer, from a psychological standpoint, is no. A psychologically normal woman cannot conceive of something like this. So when does a woman start thinking about killing? According to science and existing research, a woman who kills does so in rare cases, and almost always involves deep psychological damage and serious disorders. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, from the very beginning of documented criminology, going back to the earliest days when we first began classifying crime, since approximately the year 1724, all the way to today, only 12% of all homicides worldwide have involved a female as the primary cause. And I want you to focus on the word cause, not necessarily the one who physically killed. Sometimes she instigated it. Regardless, the idea of a woman as a killer is something society fundamentally rejects and refuses to believe. Underline that, because it will come back again and again in today's story. That one psychological truth, society's inability to see a woman as a killer, is the very thing that allowed Belle Gunness to operate for as long as she did. Be patient. Today's video will reward your attention. Now let's push the question further. Is it possible for a woman to become a serial killer? We've already said that a woman killing once, even once, is considered nearly impossible by societal standards. So a serial killer? The idea is completely dismissed. And yet, unfortunately, psychology tells us otherwise. Psychology says clearly that any human being, regardless of gender, if they carry the right combination of psychological dysfunction, a destabilized environment, and a pathological hunger for control or revenge, can transform into a monster. But the difference, the critical difference, is that a female serial killer operates very differently from a male one. She typically uses poison instead of firearms. She plans slowly, patiently, with cold precision. Where a man might kill in a burst of rage, she calculates. And criminology confirms something else. While a male serial killer may target strangers indiscriminately, a female serial killer always stays inside her own circle. Her victims are chosen from her immediate world, a husband, a fiancé, children, sometimes neighbors. And that is the true horror, that the person closest to you could be the one who ends you. The most famous example of this pattern in American history is the serial killer known as Nanny Doss, who murdered 11 members of her own family over many years. Nanny's preferred method was always poison because, as we've said, a woman is unlikely to use a firearm. She doesn't have the raw physical capacity to fight and overpower a victim with a bladed weapon. She can't strangle someone with her bare hands. So poison is the natural weapon, quiet, subtle, and untraceable. It doesn't even feel like killing. You prepare something, go to the kitchen for a meal, come back, and find the person simply gone. Clean, contained, finished. A second example, the Black Widow archetype, which I've covered in a separate video on this channel. Go watch it if you haven't. The pattern is identical. She marries wealthy men, poisons them one by one, and inherits their wealth. Over and over. The same method, always. A facade of love and care, and beneath it, calculated elimination. These examples confirm it. Even a woman can become a serial killer. And criminology is absolutely clear. A killer doesn't emerge from nowhere. A killer is a combination of factors. Personal factors like personality disorders, emotional neglect, or an obsessive drive for power and control, combined with social factors, poverty, domestic violence, an unjust environment that rewards the dishonest over the decent. When all of these converge, they can transform any human being from an ordinary person into a killer. Now, everything I've just told you wasn't an introduction. I know some of you have told me my intros run long, but I want you to understand something. I don't do introductions. I do documentary-style storytelling, and that means giving you the psychological and factual context that makes the story land the way it deserves. Regular viewers already understand this. For new subscribers, now you know what to expect. Everything I've told you so far will matter deeply as we move through this story, because all of it connects to today's protagonist. Most longtime viewers already know how this works, but this is aimed at new subscribers, so you understand our approach. Now, let's talk about Belle Gunness, the woman at the center of today's story. Belle was born in 1859 in Norway. She emigrated to America in 1881. She settled first in Illinois. Her first marriage was to a man named Mads Sorensen. A few years into the marriage, their house burned down. The insurance company paid out a settlement. And here, right here, is the detail I need you to hold on to, because it's the most important thread running through this entire story. It's the key that will unlock everything that follows. Remember the opening of this video? I told you about a fire, a woman standing outside with her daughters, watching it burn. That woman was Belle. Those were her daughters. That was her house. And to this day, there is no scientific or forensic explanation that tells us how that first fire started, or how it ended so fast. This case makes one thing absolutely clear. Belle's life was wrapped in mystery from the very beginning. Every place she went, fires, deaths, and financial payouts followed. No one understood why. They called her cursed. They said evil spirits followed her. They said she was haunted. But in reality, with one exception at the very start, she was the one engineering all of it. Now, Belle's husband. When the fire happened, Mads was in another state. The moment he heard the news, he came back immediately. But not long after, the man died. Heart failure. That was the official cause. But here's what makes it suspicious. Belle had taken out 2 life insurance policies on her husband, and he died on the exact day both policies overlapped. What a coincidence. What a legendary, once-in-history coincidence. She collected a substantial payout. After the burial, she moved on as if nothing had happened. She relocated to a small town called LaPorte in the state of Indiana, where she purchased a large farm and settled into her new life. Why did she make that choice? Why uproot and start over completely? From a psychological standpoint, this behavior has a name. It's called geographical and internal flight. A psychologically disturbed woman attempts to create a new stage, a new environment she can fully control. She wants distance from any painful past, distance from any memory. But no matter how deeply disturbed a woman becomes, she remains at her core emotional. Her feelings will always override any other impulse. And so, after every catastrophe, she runs. She changes locations. She tries to leave the past behind. The escape takes two forms: physical, relocating to a new place that holds no memories, and emotional, burying the old self completely and building a brand new identity. The farm at Laporte was where Belle forged her new self, a powerful, independent widow. And she had money, substantial money, enough to reinvent her life entirely, from the house fire insurance and the husband's life policies. The amount was never officially confirmed, but it was large. And with that money in hand, the psychology of the serial killer began to take root inside her. A hunger for control, for domination, for more. And now let me tell you how the story actually began. There's an English proverb that says, "A woman is beautiful even when she's dangerous." Today's story will confirm that entirely. In 2010, approximately 100 years after Belle Gunness, a study was published about women's relationship with attention. That study cited, as its primary evidence, the advertisements that Belle used to publish in newspapers. In this story, you will understand something very clearly. Because in 2010, roughly 100 years after Belle, this study was citing the personal ads she placed in newspapers as case evidence. And you might ask, what kind of ads? What was she writing in a newspaper in that era? Well, in Belle's time, people met each other through classified sections in the newspaper. You would publish a personal ad describing yourself, leave an address or mailing information at the end, and people would write back to you. That's exactly what Belle was doing. She placed beautifully written, poetic ads in newspapers describing herself in carefully crafted language, inviting men to come visit her or write to her. This is how she lured her victims. And those ads weren't just a hunting mechanism. They were a window into her psychological world. Their soft, gentle wording projected an image of a vulnerable woman seeking safety, while inside her mind, she was already planning how to repeat the same cycle with a new target. Lure them in, then kill them. Take their money. Here is one of her actual advertisements. Listen to how this reads, because it's remarkable. A widow seeking a good and honest husband, with the condition that he be serious and willing to live on a farm as in our shared homeland, Norway, and that he bring with him all his savings and possessions as proof of his sincerity, and so that we may feel a true sense of shared partnership. On the surface, pure, wholesome, romantic. Any man reading it would think, this sounds like the perfect woman. But before I tell you how the plan worked, let me answer one critical question. Was she only targeting men with these ads? According to the research, no. Because yesterday, today, and in any era, if a woman posts anything on a public forum, every man in range is going to respond. Guys, you know this. Some of you have fallen for profiles online that turned out to be fake. Maybe someone you know. Maybe it happened to you. Write about it in the comments. I'm confident the comment section is about to explode from this topic alone. Because it's real, it's common, and we all know it. There are men who would follow a woman to Mars the moment she says hello. This is a reality about male behavior that we can't deny. Meanwhile, one of the most important qualities of a woman is her natural dignity and restraint. The study found that if Belle had simply written, "Anyone interested in getting to know me, please reach out," dozens of men would have responded. But because she wrote in this poetic, emotionally layered style, men came from multiple states, all carrying money, all carrying hope, all dreaming that this woman would choose them. Now, we need to understand exactly what Belle's plan was with each man she lured in. First, she had strict criteria. He had to be from a different state so that when he disappeared, she could frame it naturally as a lover's quarrel that ended with him leaving. Whenever police or family members came asking, "We had an argument and he left. He took his things and went home," She would perform devastation for the officers, the heartbroken widow, wronged and abandoned. A man coming from another city or another state and storming off after a fight was completely believable. No one would suspect murder. Second criterion, he had to be older. This was deliberate. An older man who claimed to have savings was more likely to be telling the truth about his wealth. A younger man might lie to impress her, claim wealth he doesn't have.
And second, an older man would be easier to poison, less resistant, less likely to fight back. She could poison him quietly, and he'd have no strength to resist. Third criterion, and crucially, he had to be an immigrant. An immigrant has a small social circle in America. Few relatives, no community with deep roots nearby. That's exactly why in her ads she wrote about the homeland, Norway, and everything we share. Because the man she was targeting would feel seen by that language. He'd feel she understood him. And this immigrant, whoever he was, wouldn't have a tribe here asking questions, pressing authorities, refusing to let it go. And the final piece? Absolutely no heirs. Because heirs are dangerous. Heirs want answers. They want the truth. They want their father's money. They don't stop until someone gives them something. An immigrant with no close family meant, here, we bury him, and the whole matter simply dies with him.
As for how she actually killed them, forensic analysis of killers of this type shows a consistent pattern. They build trust rapidly, and then strike at a moment of psychological or physical vulnerability. In that moment, they kill, either by poison or with a sudden, unexpected blow. Bell would confirm the victim had his money, convince him she'd accepted him, create the feeling, this is real, we're building something together. Then, the moment the man retired to his room to rest, there would be a glass of water waiting for him. The moment he drank it, it was over. Sometimes she preferred a different method, a blow from an axe or a sharp implement. Either way, she would then coordinate with 2 female farmhands to move the body and bury it. Once all evidence was gone, if police came asking, she'd say, "He came. I didn't like what I saw. I sent him away." And that was that. Everyone believed her. The smartest thing she did
Was bury the bodies inside her own farm. A large farm, vast grounds, no one would see, no one would know. Bodies were placed far from view, among the trees, beneath cultivated plots in different corners of the property. This was so effective that even after she was exposed and her story was over, bodies continued being discovered for years after she was gone. And here's what will genuinely stun you. When the truth finally came out, Bell was never arrested. Why? Because of one last, brilliant piece of deception. I'll get to it. What definitively proves Bell was a serial killer is the relentless repetition of the same method, executed consistently across victim after victim. Many times, she buried them in the hog pen. If you look at the pattern end to end, older immigrant man with savings, poisoned or struck with a bladed object, buried in the hog pen. Then, search for the next victim. Her method was rational, cold, and systematic. Nothing remotely spontaneous or emotionally driven about it. This behavior is considered a watershed in the criminology of women. No matter how psychologically damaged a woman might be, it should be impossible for her to maintain that level of control across 32 victims, executing the same method with 0 deviation. What enabled her to kill that many people was the social privilege that society unknowingly gave her, the assumption that a woman simply cannot be a criminal. She killed with impunity because no one was even looking at her. From the year 1900 through 1906, 6 years, she killed 32 men, assisted in the killings and burials by her 2 farmhands who worked on the property. Why did she keep killing? And how did she finally get caught? First, we need to understand what drove her to continue. We understand she was a serial killer, but what kept her going? What was the destination? First, and most important, financial motivation. This compulsion formed inside her subconsciously, without deliberate intention. She developed an addiction to disaster and to the money that followed it. Belle lived in an era when women were economically confined. They didn't hold professional jobs. They had limited financial paths. Once she discovered that insurance money gave her financial independence, she turned it into a business. Yes, she was committing crimes. Yes, she was a killer. But that money gave her something she had never had before, a new identity, a wealthy, powerful widow with a large farm. And in that identity, she could forget the darkness she was creating. But money alone wasn't enough to sustain 32 murders. The second driver, far more disturbing, was the psychological sensation of absolute power. Every successful kill wasn't just a payday, it was a feeling. The feeling of total control over another human being's fate. Every case on this channel, every serial killer I've covered, without exception, shares this core driver: the feeling of power and control over life and death. That feeling, above any other factor, is what transforms ordinary people into serial killers. Because that sensation compounds, it builds on itself. Every crime she got away with reinforced the belief that she was above the law, above society, and untouchable. Every successful cover-up gave her a new rush of victory. In criminology, this is called criminal reinforcement. The psychology whispers, "I'm stronger than the police," which means I'm more powerful than any authority on earth. Belle's version of this celebration, the perfect crime cycle, was place the ad, attract the victim, kill them, erase the evidence, and then escape consequence. That cycle, escaping punishment, was the celebration itself. And every victim brought an immediate reward. They arrived with their money. She took it. She felt the power of having deceived an entire world.
And because no one caught her the first time, or the second, or the third, the fear disappeared. By the 10th, there was no anxiety left, no caution, just cold confidence. No one can expose me. No one is even looking. And over time, the tolerance for risk grows. The vigilance collapses. They stop being afraid. And with that loss of fear, the speed and frequency of the crimes accelerates. And all of this, everything I've just described, happened inside the mind of a woman. Think about how many psychological layers converged to bring her here. Now, the reveal I've been saving. That first fire, at the very start, the one in Illinois, she actually orchestrated it herself. But here's the complexity. At that point, she genuinely loved her husband. She was living a happy life. She had 4 children. When the house burned, she collected a large payout. And something shifted. She realized there was a way to build wealth. A year later, her first child died. A week after that, her second child died. Both from fever. Both carried life insurance. She collected again. Something crystallized inside her. A mental disorder took hold. A compulsion formed. If you want to accumulate wealth, let the people around you die. So when a serious conflict arose with her husband, she poisoned him. Cause of death? Cardiac arrest. She collected $150,000 in today's equivalent. Then she moved to the farm with her daughter. 4 years later, a story spread that she and her daughter had had a serious argument, that her daughter had left home, despite being only 14 years old. The girl hadn't left, of course. She wasn't going anywhere. She was buried in the earth of the farm. Belle had deteriorated beyond any limits. She continued placing ads. Men kept arriving. Everything was going exactly according to her design. But her daughter had found out. She had told her schoolmates that her mother was a killer, that there were bodies buried on the farm. Belle found out through one of her farmhands. She killed her own daughter to stop the information from spreading. And told the neighbors she left, she's gone. Keep in mind, everything I'm describing happened between 1900 and 1908. Life was simpler. The world was different. Even after she killed her own daughter, no one suspected her. It was unthinkable. A beautiful, wealthy woman with a large property and a respected standing could not possibly be a murderer. Until the cracks appeared. People started talking. What if Belle was actually capable of this? A man named George Anderson had visited her farm through one of her ads, and on his first night there, he woke to find Belle standing over him in the dark, holding something, expression unreadable. He felt immediately that something was wrong, that if he didn't leave right then, he would not survive the night.
He jumped through a window and ran. And he told people, but no one believed him. And neighbors began noticing things. A large number of men kept arriving at the farm. Each one would enter and then vanish. A new one would come, same thing. They also noticed she had been buying very large wooden crates large enough to fit a human body. At that point, it became impossible to ignore. Something was happening on that farm. And the story ended, but in the most extraordinary way imaginable. An ending that, despite all her crimes, confirmed one final thing. She was still, at her core, a woman. And women, even the most dangerous ones, still want to be loved. Her very last act, in 1908, was writing a personal letter to a man she had been corresponding with. She wrote, "I would be so happy to meet you. My heart beats for you, Andrew. I love you, but don't be surprised if you don't find me here. Please pray for me." 2 days after that letter, on April 28th, 1908, the entire farm burned to the ground. When the fire was extinguished, neighbors checked the grounds. The farm was empty. No money, nothing of value remained. In the main yard, 3 bodies were discovered. All 3 were headless. One was dressed in Belle's clothing, the other 2 wore the clothing of her farmhands. But all 3, no heads. When police and neighbors began combing the farm inch by inch, they found dozens of skulls buried across different locations. Bones of men, bones of children, bones of women, even animal remains. Everything scattered across the property. 109 bodies were ultimately identified on that farm. The most likely scenario, investigators concluded, was that Belle had placed someone else's body in her place and escaped to another location. She had planned and executed this final disappearance with the same precision she applied to everything. There is a secondary theory that she arranged for someone to kill her and the farmhands so that her legend would be sealed. The thinking being, I killed, I did everything, and no one caught me. And when I died on my own terms. But investigators overwhelmingly favored the first theory. The farmhands' bodies were real, but the body in Belle's clothes was someone else. The evidence was the empty farm, all money, all valuables gone. She had packed everything and left for a new location. Likely one final geographic and psychological escape to build a new stage in a new place. In every possible reading of this, Belle Gunness is a historical icon in the world of crime. An icon because she weaponized the one thing society said made her safe, her femininity. She turned her perceived weakness into a perfect cover for crimes no one believed she was capable of committing. And she found a new victim every time, because men are remarkably easy to manipulate when a woman is involved. She was genius enough to weaponize her softness and then shock the world with a ferocity no one was prepared for. That is today's story. I hope it was worth every second. I hope you learned something from it. I hope it made you feel more grounded in yourself and more discerning. I hope it built in you the knowledge that you don't need to chase validation from anyone. What's happening today is far more extreme than anything Belle Gunness had access to. In her time, she placed ads in newspapers and men came from across the country. Today, there's TikTok, there are Instagram Reels, there are 100 better tools. The principle hasn't changed, only the scale. If this story moved you, watch this next one. There's a strong parallel between them. Both stories involve a woman as the suspect. Belle was guilty, but the woman in the next story? Her truth remains unknown to this day. That story will genuinely affect you, and you won't see the ending coming. Tell me what you think in the comments.
Can a woman like Belle Gunness be called a victim of society and psychological disorder? Or is there nothing in existence that could ever justify what she did? I'm Amin the narrator. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.